Have you ever experienced this recurring and frustrating cycle in your life? Late at night, lying in bed, you are filled with deep regret and self-blame, realizing that you have wasted an entire day without making any meaningful progress. You then make firm resolutions to completely reinvent yourself starting tomorrow. You draft a detailed and rigorous daily plan, planning to go to bed early and wake up early, cut back on mindless phone scrolling, study efficiently, work diligently, keep consistent exercise routines, and maintain a healthy diet. You arrange every positive habit in meticulous detail, convinced that you will finally break free from your old self and embrace a brand new life. The next morning, you summon up all your willpower and manage to maintain strict self-discipline for a few short hours. However, as soon as you encounter a hint of boredom, physical fatigue, or emotional resistance, your determination collapses in an instant. The study and work tasks you plan to complete are replaced by endless, mindless, short video scrolling. The early bedtime you promised yourself turns into staying up late until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. The exercise and fat loss plan you adhered to for 2 days is completely abandoned, followed by uncontrolled overeating and indulgence. Once again, you fall into a state of self-blame, anxiety, and negative self-evaluation. You secretly criticize yourself for being worthless, lazy, and incapable of sticking to even the simplest personal plans. This scenario is incredibly familiar to almost every ordinary person. For most of our lives, we are trapped in an endless self-discipline loop, making ambitious resolutions, persisting for a short period, collapsing completely, falling into guilt and self-doubt, and then repeating the whole cycle over and over again. This vicious cycle consumes years, even decades of our precious time. In the end, instead of becoming better versions of ourselves, we grow increasingly inferior, mentally exhausted, and skeptical of our ability to change. We gradually believe that we are inherently undisciplined and doomed to a mediocre and unimproved life. Today, we will thoroughly break down the underlying psychological logic behind failed self-discipline and reveal a counterintuitive truth that subverts most people's inherent cognition. The reason why your self-discipline attempts fail repeatedly is never because you are lazy or lack willpower, but because you have been using the wrong self-discipline methods from the very beginning. 99% of the self-discipline guidance available on the internet is misleading and even counter-human nature toxic chicken soup. Most public opinions teach people to fight against their own instincts, restrain their desires, and rely on brutal willpower to force themselves to complete painful tasks. However, numerous psychological experiments and academic studies have long confirmed an ironclad law of human behavior. Any persistence that relies solely on forced willpower is unsustainable and destined to end in failure. True high-level self-discipline is never a form of self-torment or brutal self-restraint. Instead, it is the ability to understand the operating rules of the human brain, conform to human nature, and use professional psychological skills to gently trick your lazy brain. This method eliminates the pain and resistance of self-discipline, making self-improvement easy, natural, and sustainable. After absorbing this complete set of self-control logic, you will bid farewell to the 3-minute heat phenomenon and the internal friction caused by forced self-discipline. Even ordinary people can steadily develop long-term good habits and achieve continuous self-growth. To truly master relaxed and effective self-discipline, we first need to figure out the core reason why the human brain instinctively resists self-discipline and prefers laziness and indulgence. Most people attribute their procrastination, laziness, and inability to persist to personal flaws, believing that they are not diligent enough, not determined enough, or lack sufficient willpower. But in essence, this is not a personal shortcoming at all. It is an inherent evolutionary instinct shared by all human brains. Psychology has a classic and authoritative theory called ego-depletion theory, which is the fundamental root of almost all self-discipline failures. This theory clearly states that human willpower is not an infinite resource. Similar to mobile phone battery power or human physical strength, willpower is an extremely limited and scarce psychological resource. Every time you restrain your desires, force yourself to persist in boring tasks, or compel yourself to do things you do not want to do, you continuously consume your limited willpower reserves. What's more noteworthy is that this consumption is unidirectional and irreversible. Once your willpower is exhausted within a day, it cannot be automatically recovered or replenished until the next day. There is no way to instantly restore depleted willpower through temporary adjustment or self-encouragement. This is why forced self-discipline always ends in sudden collapse. Beyond willpower limitations, the human brain has a core evolutionary instinct formed over hundreds of thousands of years. Seeking benefits and avoiding harm, pursuing instant gratification. The core survival mission of the brain is never to help us grow, progress, or achieve self-improvement. Its most primitive and essential function is to save energy, avoid pain, and obtain immediate happiness. From the perspective of brain operation logic, productive behaviors such as studying, working, exercising, and self-improvement are all high-energy consuming, high-pain, and low-feedback behaviors. These behaviors require long-term persistence, cannot bring immediate pleasure, and will bring mental and physical fatigue in the short term. In contrast, indulgent behaviors such as scrolling through social media, watching dramas, lying flat and resting, staying up late for entertainment, and eating delicious food are low-energy consuming, high-happiness behaviors that provide instant positive feedback. This is the fundamental reason why forced self-discipline is extremely painful. When you rely on willpower to force yourself to engage in productive behaviors, you are essentially going against the brain's instincts and violating the laws of human nature. This state is just like rowing upstream against the current. You may make a little progress with great effort, but once you feel tired or relax your efforts slightly, you will be washed back to the original point, or even regress completely. This explains the typical collapse of ordinary people's self-discipline. During the day, you restrain your desire for entertainment, force yourself to focus on work and study, and exhaust all your willpower reserves. When night comes and your willpower is completely depleted, your brain will initiate a compensatory mechanism to offset the pain and pressure of the day. It will trigger a state of retaliatory indulgence and laziness, leading you to stay up late browsing videos, procrastinating on unfinished tasks, and completely abandoning your daily plans. The next morning, you wake up with intense regret and self-blame, falling into a new cycle of determination, persistence, collapse, and internal friction. Most people spend their entire lives trapped in this wrong self-discipline mode, torturing themselves repeatedly without realizing the root cause of the problem. They firmly believe that self-discipline must be painful, that the harder they are on themselves, the better the results will be, and that suffering is the only way to achieve growth. However, the truth is completely opposite to this traditional cognition. All self-discipline that requires forced perseverance and painful insistence is inefficient and short-lived. Only stress-free and relaxed self-discipline can accompany people for a lifetime and bring continuous growth. Top performers in all fields have long abandoned the wrong way of fighting against their own brains and instincts. Instead, they learn to conform to brain rules, use psychological techniques to outsmart their inner laziness, and achieve long-term self-discipline in a relaxed state. The following 3 sets of core self-control methods are layered, progressive, and highly practical. They are specially designed for ordinary people's common problems such as severe procrastination, habitual laziness, and difficulty persisting. These methods do not require brutal willpower or endure mental internal friction. As long as you practice them consistently, you can gradually correct bad habits and develop a top-tier self-discipline constitution. The first core technique is the 5-minute activation rule, which is used to break the brain's startup resistance and cure procrastination at its source. We can think about a question deeply. When you are procrastinating, are you really unwilling to complete the task, or are you afraid of starting the task? Psychological research data shows that what the brain resists is never the process of completing a task, but the moment of starting the task. When you set a goal of studying for 2 hours, working all afternoon, exercising for half an hour, or finishing a whole chapter of reading, your brain will instantly predict the boredom, fatigue, and time cost of the task. Once the brain judges that the task is cumbersome, painful, and time-consuming, it will immediately activate an avoidance mechanism, finding various excuses to delay and resist action. You will subconsciously tell yourself to rest for 5 more minutes, play for a while longer, or start the task tomorrow. Over time, this avoidance mentality will solidify into habitual procrastination, making it harder and harder for you to start any task. This is the underlying logic behind the common saying that the beginning is the hardest part. Your ability is never the problem. The excessive startup threshold set by your cognition is the real obstacle. The 5-minute activation rule is the ultimate method to break through the brain's avoidance mechanism. Its core logic is extremely simple. Infinitely lower the task startup threshold and completely relax the brain's vigilance against pain. From now on, no matter how resistant, lazy, or procrastinating you feel, never set grand and arduous goals for yourself. Do not demand yourself to study for 3 hours at a time, finish all work tasks in one go, or complete high-intensity exercise. Instead, tell yourself firmly, I will only do this task for 5 minutes, and I can stop immediately without any compulsion once the 5 minutes are over. When you reduce the task goal to only 5 minutes, the brain will completely eliminate its sense of resistance in the brain's cognitive system. 5 minutes of effort is negligible, and the pain cost is completely acceptable. There is no need to avoid or resist such a trivial task. This is the effect we need. Tricking the brain into completing the initial activation of behavior. This technique is based on the psychological behavioral inertia law. Once human behavior is successfully initiated, it will form continuous inertia, and it will be difficult to stop actively. Most of the time, you linger and hesitate for a long time without taking action, but once you force yourself to study, work, or exercise for just 5 minutes, you will find that the task is far less painful than you imagined. You will gradually enter a focused state, immerse yourself in the work, and unconsciously persist for half an hour, or even longer. Even if you really want to stop after 5 minutes, there is no loss at all. You do not consume excessive willpower, do not generate negative resistance emotions, and most importantly, you complete a successful behavioral activation. Over time, you will completely get rid of the fear of starting tasks and the problem of habitual procrastination. The fundamental reason why most people's self-discipline fails completely is that they set an excessively high startup threshold. They dare not start once, and then dare not start again and again, eventually falling into complete laziness and abandonment. Always remember this core principle. The first step of self-discipline is never to persist for a long time, but to be willing to start. The second core technique is the lightweight self-discipline rule, which is used to eliminate perfectionism and cure severe mental internal friction. After observing the self-discipline status of a large number of people who fail to persist, we find that almost all of them have the same fatal flaw: extreme perfectionism. Most people have extremely harsh and extreme definitions of self-discipline. Their inherent cognition is all or nothing. Either they do not do it at all, or they must pursue absolute perfection and ultimate results in everything. Their self-discipline standards are so strict that they leave no room for error or tolerance. Those who are trapped in perfectionism believe that if they want to read books, they must read for 2 hours every day without interruption. They want to lose weight, they must completely cut off snacks, late-night meals, and carbohydrates. If they want to study efficiently, they must maintain full concentration all day without any distraction or rest. If they want to change themselves, they must achieve overnight transformation and completely abandon all bad habits in a short time. But this kind of perfect and extreme self-discipline is the most anti-human nature and most collapse-prone way of self-improvement in the world. Psychology's broken windows theory is particularly applicable to self-discipline scenarios. When you set an overly perfect and harsh standard for self-discipline, any small mistake, slight laziness, or minor imperfection will trigger a comprehensive collapse of your mentality. For example, you insist on going to bed early for 5 consecutive days, but you accidentally stay up late once on the 6th day. Instead of accepting this small mistake and continuing to persist, you will have a broken bucket mentality. You will think that all your previous 5 days of efforts are wasted because of this one mistake, and it is better to give up completely and indulge yourself wantonly. Another common example is weight loss self-discipline. After adhering to a strict diet for several days, you accidentally eat a big meal. You will immediately fall into extreme self-denial, think that you have no perseverance and self-control, and directly abandon the entire weight loss plan, returning to the state of overeating and inactivity. This is the fatal internal friction brought by perfectionism. It does not allow any imperfection in the process, and once a small error occurs, it chooses to completely abandon all persistence and efforts. This is why countless people's self-discipline plans end in failure after only a few days of persistence. The self-discipline that can truly accompany ordinary people for a lifetime is never perfect and harsh, but lightweight, low pressure, and error tolerant. From today on, completely abandon your harsh and extreme self-discipline standards and replace all difficult and heavy goals with small, lightweight, and achievable ones. There is no need to force yourself to read for an hour every day. Reading 1 page or 10 minutes a day is enough to make progress. There is no need to insist on high-intensity exercise for an hour every day. 5 minutes of stretching or 10 minutes of walking is a successful exercise persistence. There is no need to prohibit yourself from touching your mobile phone at all. Maintaining 20 minutes of focused work every day and gradually improving your concentration is effective growth. Most importantly, stop completely denying yourself and giving up persistence because of occasional staying up late, temporary laziness, or accidental indulgence. Always keep in mind the core truth of self-discipline. The meaning of self-discipline is continuous progress, not flawless perfection. Even a tiny progress every day will bring earth-shaking changes and transformation after 1 year of accumulation. On the contrary, pursuing perfect and high-pressure self-discipline will only make you collapse and give up in a few days, leaving you trapped in place and consumed by internal friction forever. Let go of your perfectionist obsession. Accept your imperfections and occasional laziness. Reduce the pain threshold of self-discipline, and you can achieve long-term and stable self-percent. The third core technique is the positive feedback replacement rule, which fundamentally reverses the brain's resistance to self-discipline and makes active self-discipline a natural habit. Many people cannot persist in self-discipline for a long time for another key reason. In their cognitive system, self-discipline is always accompanied by pain and sacrifice, without any happiness and positive feedback. Most people equate self-discipline with deprivation and restraint. They believe that self-discipline means giving up entertainment, forbidding mobile phone scrolling, quitting dramas and games, and restraining all happy behaviors. Long-term exposure to this wrong cognition will make the brain form a fixed judgment. Self-discipline is a kind of punishment, while laziness and indulgence are rewards and welfare, since the brain's instinct is to pursue happiness and avoid pain. It will naturally resist self-discipline crazily and yearn for indulgence. The more you force yourself to restrain your desires and adhere to painful self-discipline, the more eager your brain will be for indulgence, and the collapse of self-discipline will be an inevitable result. To solve the problem fundamentally, we need to completely reverse the brain's cognitive logic, bind happiness and positive feedback to self-discipline, and set threshold constraints for lazy indulgence. This method relies on psychology's classical conditioning mechanism to reshape the brain's behavioral preferences through reasonable behavioral replacement. Do not regard entertainment and happiness as inherent rights that can be enjoyed unconditionally. Instead, take happiness and relaxation as exclusive rewards after completing self-discipline tasks. Most people's daily behavioral logic is wrong. They indulge in entertainment first, and then perfunctorily complete study and work tasks, or even abandon their plans directly after indulgence. We need to completely reverse this order. Discipline first, enjoyment later, and self-discipline becomes the prerequisite for obtaining happiness. If you want to scroll through short videos and relax, first complete 30 minutes of focused study and work. If you want to watch dramas and enjoy entertainment, first finish your daily small growth goals, and then relax without guilt. If you want to enjoy delicious food and big meals, first adhere to a few days of healthy diet and moderate exercise and use delicious food as a reward for your persistence. After long-term adherence to this logical replacement, the brain will gradually establish a new cognitive connection. Self-discipline is no longer a painful punishment, but a valuable chip in exchange for happiness and relaxation. When self-discipline can bring immediate positive feedback and pleasant experience, the brain will completely eliminate its resistance to self-discipline and even take the initiative to pursue self-discipline and growth. In addition to external feedback binding, we also need to learn to accumulate internal sense of achievement feedback. The reason why many people lack self-discipline motivation for a long time is that they only focus on their own shortcomings and uncompleted tasks and always maintain a state of self-denial. They feel worthless because of one day of laziness, deny all their efforts because of one uncompleted goal, and fall into negative emotions all year round. However, smart people who achieve long-term self-discipline are good at discovering their own progress and affirming their own efforts. Even 5 minutes of effective self-discipline is a victory over procrastination and laziness. Even a tiny bit of progress is a positive step towards self-improvement. Give yourself timely affirmation and encouragement every day. Accumulate positive psychological feedback continuously, and your self-discipline motivation will become more and more sufficient and stable. Gradually, you will no longer need external supervision and forced restraint. You will take the initiative to pursue self-growth and self-improvement, which is the highest state of self-discipline. After understanding these 3 core psychological techniques, we can completely sort out the essential differences between low-level pseudo-self-discipline and high-level real self-discipline so as to completely get rid of confusion and internal friction. Ordinary people's low-level self-discipline is essentially against human nature, relying on brutal willpower, pursuing perfect results, and carrying out self-torment all the time. Although this way of persistence seems diligent and positive in the short term, it consumes a huge amount of psychological energy, is extremely prone to mental collapse, and can only last for a few days at most. After the collapse, it will fall into more serious laziness and deeper self-internal friction. High-level, top-tier self-discipline is essentially conforming to human nature, flexibly outsmarting the lazy brain, reducing the threshold of persistence, accumulating continuous positive feedback, and achieving growth in a relaxed state. It does not require enduring pain and suffering, does not produce self-evaluation, and does not rely on forced restraint. It uses psychological laws to adapt to the brain's operating habits and turns arduous self-discipline tasks into natural daily habits. Countless people spend their whole lives trapped in pseudo-self-discipline. They seem to be busy and diligent every day, but they have been violating their inner instincts and consuming their psychological energy in vain. Their efforts are all inefficient internal friction, making them more tired and confused as they persist, and never achieving real qualitative growth. Real growth is never an ascetic self-torment, but a process of understanding oneself, accepting oneself, and progressing step by step. Do not pursue overnight transformation, and do not force yourself to achieve perfect self-change in a short time. Accept your innate laziness and inertia. Allow yourself occasional relaxation and imperfection, and do not demand absolute rigor in every state. Use the 5-minute activation method to break the deadlock of procrastination. Use lightweight self-discipline to get rid of perfectionist internal friction, and use positive feedback mechanism to develop long-term good habits. You will gradually realize that self-discipline does not require painful insistence at all, and self-growth can be relaxed and natural. Those seemingly distant growth goals and unattainable self-improvement will gradually take root and bloom in the continuous relaxed persistence day after day. Many people are confused about why they have been working hard all the time but never get the life they want. The core answer is simple. You have been consuming yourself with wrong methods all the year round and never used scientific laws to shape and achieve yourself. Willpower is limited and will be exhausted with use, but good habits are infinite and can run automatically without consumption. Temperaments relying on willpower is a kind of suffering and torment, while persistence relying on habits is a kind of instinct and nature. When you learn to conform to brain instincts and trick your inner laziness, and turn self-discipline into an automatic daily habit, you no longer need strong willpower to maintain growth, and you can steadily and continuously become better. The ultimate wisdom of self-discipline is never to defeat and suppress yourself, but to understand yourself, treat yourself kindly, and achieve yourself. There is no need for excessive anxiety, meaningless internal friction, and harsh self-denial. Take your time, persist easily, accumulate for a long time, and all the transformation and excellence you yearn for will be given to you by time. In daily life, most people overestimate their short-term self-control and underestimate their long-term inertia. They always set overly ambitious self-discipline goals at the beginning, hold extremely high expectations for themselves, and finally collapse rapidly because they cannot bear the pressure, falling into a cycle of greater loss and deeper self-doubt. Therefore, the core of long-term self-discipline is always stability and continuity, not intensity and suddenness. A 10-minute lightweight persistence every day is far more valuable than a 10-hour high-intensity forced persistence that only lasts one day. Growth is never a sprint. but a long-distance run that requires steady rhythm and continuous output. Learn to reconcile with your brain and human nature. Stop fighting against your instincts and start using psychological rules to guide your behavior. When you no longer regard self-discipline as a burden and a punishment, but as a way of self-healing and self-improvement, you will truly understand the meaning of self-growth and embrace a brand new, self-disciplined life. Many people fail to recognize that self-discipline is not a one-time revolution, but a gradual accumulation of small daily behaviors that slowly reshape your entire personality and life state. Every tiny positive choice you make every day, whether it is focusing on work for a few more minutes, putting down your phone to rest on time, or sticking to a simple physical activity, is quietly laying the foundation for your future transformation. On the contrary, every moment of lazy indulgence and procrastination, though seemingly insignificant at the moment, will slowly accumulate into huge gaps between individuals over months and years. You will find that people who insist on relaxed and lightweight self-discipline every day do not feel tired or painful at all, but are constantly moving forward and getting better quietly, while those who pursue extreme self-discipline and rely on brutal willpower are always wandering between collapse and self-repentance, stuck in place and unable to make effective progress. The biggest misunderstanding of self-discipline in modern society is equating it with suffering and self-torture, making countless people fear self-discipline and dare not start changing themselves. In fact, the real essence of self-discipline is self-love and self-management. It is to use scientific methods to restrain your trivial laziness, resist instant trivial happiness, and exchange short-term comfort for long-term freedom and superiority. When you can calmly accept your imperfections, no longer blame yourself for occasional mistakes, no longer pursue illusory perfect self-transformation, your self-discipline will truly begin to take effect. You will no longer be anxious and impetuous, no longer eager for quick success and instant benefits, but steadily accumulate strength in every ordinary day. All outstanding abilities and enviable lives in the world are not achieved by sudden efforts and overnight changes, but by countless relaxed, persistent, and unremarkable daily accumulations. Most people tend to overestimate the power of sudden breakthroughs and dramatic changes, while underestimating the incredible power of tiny, consistent daily actions. They keep waiting for a perfect day to start over completely, waiting for a burst of motivation to support long-term self-discipline, and waiting for a turning point that can instantly change their mediocre life. However, motivation is never something that comes first to drive action. On the contrary, action is the only thing that can generate lasting motivation. If you always wait until you feel willing and motivated to start working and studying, you will never take a step forward for the rest of your life. Human emotion and mentality are extremely unstable and changeable. One minute you may be full of fighting spirit and eager to change yourself, and the next minute you may be influenced by negative emotions, laziness, and tiredness, falling into a state of complete slackness and indulgence. True self-disciplined people never rely on fleeting mood and passion to support their growth. They rely on fixed behavioral habits and scientific psychological rules to maintain steady progress all the time. Many people's self-discipline failure also stems from excessive pursuit of rapid results and extreme impatience. After adhering to good habits for a few days, if they do not see obvious changes in life, state, or ability, they will immediately feel disappointed and doubt the meaning of their persistence. They begin to think that these trivial daily efforts are useless, that they cannot bring substantial improvement, and then quickly give up all their previous efforts and return to their original lazy and indulgent life state. This kind of impetuous mentality is the biggest stumbling block on the road to self-growth. All valuable growth and transformation are delayed feedback results. The efforts you put in today will not take effect immediately, nor will they bring visible rewards in a short time. Instead, they will accumulate silently in the background, changing your thinking mode, behavioral habits, mental state, and cognitive perspective little by little. When the accumulation reaches a certain critical point, qualitative changes will occur suddenly, bringing you unexpected progress and surprises. Those who give up persistence because of invisible short-term gains can never wait for the moment of qualitative change. They stay in the cycle of working hard for a few days and giving up for a long time all year round, watching others progress steadily while they are always standing still. Therefore, in the process of self-discipline growth, patience is more important than willpower, and continuity is more valuable than intensity. You need to understand that every minute of relaxed persistence is paving the way for your future excellence, even if there is no immediate reward or praise. Even if no one notices your silent efforts, you must stick to your rhythm firmly. Self-growth is a lonely journey that belongs only to you. It does not need external supervision and admiration, nor does it need momentary excitement and passion. What it needs is down-to-earth persistence and unswerving self-discipline day after day. In addition, we need to abandon another wrong cognition. Self-discipline is not a kind of self-abuse, nor is it a kind of forced restraint that makes oneself miserable. On the contrary, real self-discipline is the highest form of self-love. When you resist temporary indulgence and adhere to positive habits every day, you are not punishing yourself, but protecting your future self. You are using present efforts to exchange for more free choices, more confident state, and more autonomous life rights in the future. People who are undisciplined and indulgent for a long time may feel relaxed and happy in the short term, but they will eventually pay a heavy price for their laziness and impetuosity. Mediocre life, insufficient ability, passive choices, and inner inferiority and anxiety are all negative consequences brought by long-term lack of self-discipline. On the contrary, people who adhere to relaxed and scientific self-discipline will gradually get rid of inner confusion and life passivity, and gain steady self-confidence and life initiative in continuous growth. As you gradually apply the 5-minute activation rule, lightweight self-discipline rule, and positive feedback replacement rule to your daily life,